For the latest in strategic affairs, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Click the bell icon for more updates.
Did you know that 85% of the credit needs of the small-scale sector are met through informal means? Did you know that the small-scale sector in India accounts for 30% of India's gross domestic product? Did you know that the small-scale sector in India employs 110 million people, which is 1/5 of India's workforce? Hello and welcome to another edition of Capital Calculus. I am your host Anil Padmanabhan. India's worst kept secret is about the immense potential of its small and medium enterprises, or what we popularly know as SMEs. Yet SMEs have always performed below potential, and this despite every regime since independence knowing the fix: access to bank credit. Now there's fresh hope. OCEN, or the Open Credit Enablement Network, promises to fix this gap through digital lending. OCEN, like Aadhaar and UPI before it, is another digital public good. How will this DPG work, and why will it succeed where past efforts have failed? To answer this, we spoke to Sharad Sharma. He's a tech evangelist and co-founder of iSpirt. iSpirt is this bunch of technology volunteers based out of Bangalore with a guiding spirit and force behind India's rapidly expanding DPG infrastructure, including OCEN. OCEN has been around for the last 2 years, but it's back in the news with a new version called OCEN 4.0. I began by asking Sharad, what was the need to relaunch OCEN?
It's not relaunched. What has been launched is OCEN 4, OCEN 4.0. So the history of OCEN is that in the last 2 years, there have been lots of pilots that have happened. And, of which, of course, one of the biggest one is called GEM Sahe with the government marketplace, but there are many others. And so that's really from the learnings from those pilots has been invaluable. And now there is confidence that we've kind of understood the big challenges that were there and solved them. And it is now ready for prime time. Up till now, we have never said OCEN is ready for prime time. We have only said OCEN is ready for pilots. So in some sense, this is not a relaunch, it's a launch. Earlier, what was launched was OCEN for pilots. Now it's been launched for OCEN for prime time. And just to put this in perspective, all this actually came from the MSME, UK Sena MSME committee report, right? And which was submitted to the government in June of 2019. And the government accepted that report. And that is how the work on OCEN, the design work on OCEN started. And then it took from June of 2019 to July of 2021 for OCEN 1 to come. And now it's taken us 2 years of pilot testing to go from OCEN 1 to OCEN 4. And OCEN 4 is the one which is ready for prime time.
So you mentioned MSME, Sharad. So what is the credit need that OCEN is trying to resolve here?
Yes. So what happens is that this is true both for individual lending as well as for MSME lending. And there is a very close parallel between the two. In MSME lending, if I'm an MSME, I go to a bank, the bank usually would give me a working capital limit for a year. And so the rule for the bank is that, look, if your business is growing for the past 3 years, then it's safe for me to estimate that this current year revenue will be at least as much as last year. So therefore, they are able to say that I'll give you a one year working capital limit. Some banks say it will be an average of the last 2 years. Some banks say it will be the average of the last 3 years. Now, looking at GST data, we can see how many companies have these rising revenues for the last 3 years. And that number is only 14.8%. So if you round that off to 15%, 85% of the MSMEs by definition are not eligible for the 1 year working capital limit. And those MSMEs are also needy of credit as they go forward. So the question is, what do you do in such a situation? The only thing that you can do in such a situation is to say, while I can't predict what your next year will be like, I can predict what your next quarter would be like, because, that's obviously much more predictable. And I can therefore give you a 1 quarter loan, right? And a cash flow loan. And many MSMEs would be delighted with that, because with that 1 quarter loan, if let us say they manufacture chairs, they can buy the raw materials, make the chair, sell the chair. If they assemble ACs, they can do the same thing for ACs, right? So in a business cycle, the business cycle of a quarter is very useful. You can make use of that credit that you have to grow your business. And so therefore, what OCEN is enabling is this short tenor cash flow lending, unsecured cash flow lending for MSMEs.
OCEN was designed to solve for a particular pain point of the SME sector, that is, access to short-term unsecured working capital. I was curious to know as to how this would work. After all, lenders like banks have always avoided taking such risks.
So let's take a very simple example. Let's say I am a lender and I have to give a 1 lakh rupee to an MSME for 1 year. Now, and let's say, I have my credit spread is 5%, which means let's imagine that I am getting the loan at 10%. I am putting my spread of 5% and giving it out at 15%, right? So that 5% that is my spread will amount to about 5,000 rupees for a 1 lakh rupee loan for a year. Now that 5,000 rupees has to pay for the cost of acquisition, the cost of processing the loan, dispersing the loan, collecting the loan, and the regulatory compliance. And let us say all this amounts to 2,000 rupees. So now what has happened is that in this 1 year loan, I have received 5,000 rupees, spent 2,000 rupees, made a profit of 3,000 rupees. Are you with me so far, right? Now imagine that this loan is now given only for a quarter. Now, if it's given for a quarter, then obviously I make only 1,250 rupees. And my costs are not based on how long the loan is. My cost of acquisition, cost of processing, cost of dispersing, cost of collection, cost of regulatory compliance is still the same. So I cannot make money on a short tenor loan as things stood, till a few months back. So what the real actual effort that has been made is to reduce that 2,000 rupee cost to actually 200 rupee cost. By reducing that 200 rupee to 200 rupees, a 1,250 rupees incoming is now an attractive proposition for me. And so therefore, I can now pursue this idea of giving a short tenor loan. Otherwise, it was good in theory, but not good in practice. Now, the question is, how do you reduce these costs? To reduce these costs, you have to do many things. One is to give them a loan where the disbursement is for a particular purpose. So if you're giving a loan to a restaurant for electricity bill, don't give the money so that they're tempted to use it for something else. Actually pay the electricity bill, because now that's a better use of money, less likelihood of it getting wasted elsewhere, and the chances of repayment become higher. Second, lock in the future cash flow that will come. So if I'm going to manufacture chairs, because I use that money to really buy raw materials, make something, sell that something in the market, and when I sell it, there'll be incoming cash flow, and I lock in that cash flow, then my chances of recovering that loan become a lot higher, and the cost of recovering that loan become a lot lower. Third, to be able to do it properly, some of the people will be remote. For example, the lender may be in Jaipur and the borrower may be in Meerut, right? But there are some agents that need to be local in nature. So in these 2 years, we were able to figure out what should be remote, what should be local. And then you have to string all of them together. You have to bundle all of this together, because it's one experience ultimately. And that is what digital allows you to do. And then allow you to report to RBI in a completely electronic fashion, in a real-time fashion. So you don't need accountants, you don't need complicated books. RBI doesn't need to do, audits based on historical data, because they have real-time data coming to them. So by attacking all these 5 costs that I told you, in a way, by rethinking how the ecosystem will be, and then enabling that ecosystem with this digital public infrastructure, is how we've been able to reduce the costs. And since we've been able to reduce the costs, now we are able to actually say this is not only desirable, but this is actually a very attractive proposition from a profitability perspective. And so then it becomes an attractive proposition for everybody concerned. And that is really what is happening here.
So, Sharad, what you just said, it's a win-win for everyone, consumer, auto lender, regulator. But now, just a quick follow-up. So how do these interest rates compare to, say, previously the MSME, that 85% category had to go and borrow? What would be the interest rate compared to the working capital loan that they could now get through an institutional framework?
Right. So in the pilots that we have done, our working capital loans have been in low teens. And on an average, it's 14 point some percent overall. So low teens is a very, very attractive rate. And why is it attractive is because the costs have come down. So the NBFCs and the banks, their wholesale capital is in the range of 8 to 10%. So, now therefore they can give a loan at something in the range of 14%. And what is the alternative that the MSME had was to go to the money lender. Now, the money lender starts at 18%, but it could be 20%, 22%, not unusual for it to be in that range. So, therefore, there is, this would only work if the loan rate was very low. And the loan rate would be very low only if your costs were very low, right? And then only would this be workable. And we are therefore feeling good about this, that this has now come to a point where this is a win-win for everybody. The person who gives the loan ends up making money, and the person who receives the loan gets it in low teens, which is a very attractive proposition for them as well. And yes, they get only a short tenor loan, not a long tenor loan, but that's good enough to get the engine going and let the flywheel of the MSME take off as it moves forward.
OCEN's plan to democratize credit has one key building block, the account aggregator, or the AA framework as it is popularly known. The AA framework is a data fiduciary authorized by the Reserve Bank of India to facilitate streamlined, secure exchange of data between the borrower and the lender.
Account aggregator is one of the most important building blocks here. But remember, some of the audience may know of this idea of Rajini. Rajini is the street vendor that we want to be able to give her an intraday loan. We are not there yet. And in some sense, India Stack has been built for Rajini, right? So we've got to a point where we can give an MSME loan in a healthy way, for a quarter. But we have still a couple of years to go before we can give a profitable loan to Rajini. Now, you remember, for all this to happen, many things have been built over the last few years. Of course, account aggregator is part of it. The fact that you can do UPI transactions which are free, where you can send money for free and receive money back in free is necessary for this. That person should be able to store the loan agreement somewhere. So DigiLocker is important. They should be able to sign the loan agreement digitally. So e-sign is important. For that to happen, the KYC should not cost 50 rupees and should cost only 5 rupees, right? And therefore, e-KYC is important. So this is a culmination of a journey that's been on since 2013, 2014, because, if you type in Rajini India Stack, right, and iSpirt, the first Google slide that will come up goes back to early 2014. So this has been in the public domain saying we are going to work on this and bring this to life. And we know it will take us 10 years to do that. And we are getting close to Rajini, but at least for now, we can serve the MSMEs as we go forward. So yes, it relies on data. and data sharing system that India needed. And as you know, the genius of our regulatory system is that they put the account aggregator in place because they expose this only to regulated entities. And thankfully, after it was launched, much the same way as OCEN, as you know, the account aggregator, the pilots were launched on July 25th, 2019. And the full launch took place on September 2nd or September 3rd of 2021, roughly about 2 years later. And after that, it is now a rocket ship, right? And it's doing very well in the market. And so now that gives us the opportunity to build on top of or account aggregator and everything else. Now, the good news is that the DPDP bill essentially takes the account aggregator idea and opens it up to every other sector, right? And that confidence with which the bill kind of makes that mandatory would not have been there had this not been piloted in the financial data space, right? And now for 2 years, it's been piloted in the financial, not piloted, it's been deployed in the financial data space, and 2 years before that piloting. And that 4 years of experience tells us that this is a very robust system, it is secure, it's very privacy preserving, because no big problems have come up at all in these 4 years. So therefore, the fact is that it gives us now this opportunity to go to what is called as information collateral based lending instead of physical collateral based lending, right? And it's a very, very significant shift. And India is one of the first countries in the world to attempt this shift at the scale that we are thinking right now. And this wouldn't have been possible but for the account app.
I just want to pick up from where you left off, Sharad, the shift from collateral-based to more of flow or / information-based lending is very pivotal because it suddenly democratizes the idea of credit, right?
This is what we do with startups. See, I had the privilege of doing a startup, back in the US. I mean, I came from a middle-class family. I didn't have any major savings or anything like that. But when VCs look at you, they don't expect you to, to have physical collateral to offer for the equity that they are giving you. They say, look, if you have a great idea and, you got, the right team and it's the right market, we will give you money. Now, in India, the problem is that most of our MSME lending is against physical collateral. And that is very unfair because, it doesn't democratize MSMEs at all. And so this has the potential to democratize it.
You heard Sharad. OCEN holds out the promise of democratizing credit. After so many false starts, it's only natural to be skeptical about OCEN's promise. But remember, OCEN is a digital public good. And the DPGs before it, Aadhaar and UPI, have been spectacular successes. If indeed OCEN does deliver on its promise, it will transform the SMEs into a force multiplier in the Indian economy. They will generate more jobs and more growth. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to Strat News Global on YouTube. Hit the bell icon so that you don't miss any updates. And if you liked this episode, please hit the like button. And please do share your thoughts, ideas and suggestions with us. I'm available on Twitter at Capital Calculus. I'll be back next week with another episode. Till then, stay safe.